Hey YouTube, how's it going? Kevin Cleary here with a knife video, and this is my full review of the Benchmade Freek. Now, right off the bat, let me say I'm not a huge fan of that name Freek. However, I'm a pretty big fan of this knife. Overall, this is going to be fairly positive. There are a couple things that I'll comment on that I would like to see done better, and there will be one thing that really stands out to me as something that would make this knife amazing, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. Before we get to all that though, let me say the reason I'm into this knife, and if you like the Benchmade Griptilian, and I kind of do, but just find it to be a little bit small. The two big problems I had with the Griptilian were, number one, the handle size. It always felt, my hand always felt crowded on that handle, and number two, the blade shapes. I was never a huge fan. I did I have reviewed on this channel the Ritter grip, which I do like better, and this blade is kind of like that, so it makes perfect sense that I would be more appreciative of this blade shape than the normal standard Griptilian blade. So this was, you know, it kind of did a couple of things right. It made the handle a little bit bigger, the blade shape a little bigger, or a little longer, and better as far as I'm concerned. And so for those reasons, I was pretty curious about this. Not only that, guys, but you know, I wanted to see what Benchmade was going to put out there for this price point, which is a little bit on the budget end of things, especially for a Benchmade. And I wanted to see, you know, kind of what all the fuss was about with this model and one other. So by the way, when we get to comparisons, I will have a bit of an extended discussion about the Boost. Okay, so we'll talk about that. And if you want to hear about that, then wait for the comparisons. I've got some other comparisons as well that we'll bring in here. So let's go ahead and get started the way we always do with size and weight. So this knife overall is 8 7/16, so just under 8.5 inches. The blade is just over 3.5 inches, so 3 9/16. The closed length on this guy is 4 7/8. Actually, it's just a teeny bit under that. And most impressively, the weight on this guy is 3.7 ounces. So very, very lightweight for a knife of this size. And so all of those things come together. And by the way, let me flip the knife over this way. You can see it's a little thick, sort of like the Griptilian, but very, very comfortable in hand. And with that weight and that overall size, this carries really, really nicely. So as an EDC blade, something you're gonna have in your pocket all the time, every day, absolutely well suited to that role. Okay, I will make one comment about the rubberized grip here, since this is when we talk about how comfortable this is to carry. I will say this, at the odd time, okay, and this is a very odd time because I don't usually wear jeans that are really tight, but if you wear fairly tight jeans, this rubber can kind of grip to the fabric inside your pocket. And I only really had that happen with one pair of jeans, but if you're one of those guys that wears, you know, the skinny jeans every day, I can't imagine too many knife guys doing that, but if you are, you might have a hard time getting this in and out of pocket. For the rest of the time, you know, most of the time I'm wearing khakis, cargo pants, 511 pants. I had no issue at all with that, but I just wanted to make you aware of it when we're talking about how this knife carries. Otherwise, great knife to carry, extremely comfortable. You don't even know you have it with you. So generally speaking, great knife to carry. Let's go on now to the blade. S30V blade, drop point, again, similar to the Ritter Griptilian. Let me come in here a little bit closer for you. This one does say first production run, which is either here nor there. Now, one thing I want to point out is, hold on, let's see if I can get this to show up really well. Notice how there seems to be a heavier grind on the flats than on the satin. I think that looks kind of cool. I mean, it's not the most amazing thing ever, but thought I'd point it out to you. Also, this is fairly thin blade stock with a very high flat grind, and that means this knife is really nice and thin behind the edge, slices really, really well. If you ever use your EDC knife for any kind of food cutting or any kind of slicing tasks, this knife really, really excels. And so from that standpoint, you know, I'm a huge, huge fan of this blade. S30V here, definitely, again, an upgrade from the Griptilian, and again, offered at a really nice price point. So overall, you know, this blade, I really can't say anything negative about it. I like the shape of it. I like the grind. I will say this, overall, and Benchmade really seems to struggle with this. If you look at that secondary bevel, it's pretty even, and Benchmade as I say, can sometimes mess that up pretty good, but they have not done so with this knife. So I think they deserve a little bit of credit there. I know it sounds crazy, a premium knife company, and we're saying, hey, they did it right, which is a little bit sad, but I've got to give them credit. They seem to be paying a little more attention to the level of quality, and I really think with this blade they have done a great job. Really, really nice performing blade. Let's talk now about lockup and deployment. The Axis lock is fairly well known and fairly well loved, okay? This one, I will say, is even better than a lot of the Axis locks I've had. Notice I can spider flick this, I can really pop it out easily, or you can just actuate the lock and this knife will drop. Really, really impressive action on this. Probably, I don't know, outside of the 940, this is the best action I have ever felt on a Benchmade. And guess what? I'm going to say this, I'll bring this in a little bit early. The boost, I did de-assist this. I've got it re-assisted now because I want to have it assisted when I do my video of it. But I did de-assist this, and this was amazingly smooth as well. So seems like, you know, we're headed in the right direction when it comes to quality and quality control and attention to detail over at Benchmade. Otherwise, there's not a lot to say about the Axis lock. If you're not familiar with it, the way this works is you've got this bar that goes across and it slides up onto the back of the blade tang there, and then there are two springs called omega springs because they look like the Greek letter omega, and they're under the scale here, and they push that forward into place. So most of you, I'm sure, are familiar with the Axis lock, but just in case there's someone there who's not. Now that spring being introduced there, and they're fairly thin wire springs, does produce or does create the potential for failure. But, you know, it doesn't seem to be that big of a deal. And if it were to ever fail, Benchmade will fix you up fairly promptly. Okay, so lockup and deployment, yeah, very good and very smooth. Oh yeah, let me mention, I did mention this in my first impressions video. I don't know why I can't do this left-handed today, but the washers on this are fairly large compared to a lot of other knives that you see, and I do like that. A large washer gives you more stability, more surface area, just overall going to be a better performing knife, which I definitely like. Now, we're going to talk about the handle next, and this is one of those areas I'm going to spend a little bit more time on because there's a few things going on here, mostly the construction. Look in there, you can see that this is sort of a hollow, skeletonized, sort of honeycomb pattern of Grivery with this VersaFlex rubberized coating over it. And notice, let's see if I can get you a good look at this, maybe where the light's reflecting. See the light reflecting off that little strip of metal there? So you can see about where my finger is now. So let's turn the knife this way. Yeah, this screw goes right into the end of the metal insert that's here to allow for proper lock function. Okay, so that's how much metal, it ends right there. That's sort of like the Griptilian, but in fact the Griptilian has a little more extension on their metal insert. How do I feel about that? Well, here's the thing. With this particular construction, I don't think it matters, okay? Yeah, if this were G10 with full liners like this, okay, so here's full stainless steel liners, yeah, and then a backspacer or standoff construction, that could make the knife stronger. But in this configuration where all you've got is these two halves that are screwed together, here's the screws right there, I don't think adding more metal on the inside would help in any significant way, right? You'd still have the potential for this back part to flex. And if you squeeze really hard on this, okay, let's see if I can show you. It's easier near the back where there's less, where you're further away from the pivot. You can get a little bit of deflection on that. Now I will say this, I don't know if it's just the addition of the VersaFlex, which is just a rubberized coating, whether it's that or whether it's the different pattern of skeletonizing or the different pattern of internal framework that they've used, but this knife does definitely feel more solid than the Griptilian. And that's one of those, and it doesn't suffer from the, I don't know how to describe it, but just say the cheap feeling of the Griptilian. It feels more substantial and it feels higher quality even though it's lighter. Okay, so that's my discussion on the internal construction of the handle. I think if you're going this route, then the less metal is fine. let me talk about the rubber and then we'll talk about something else. The rubberized coating does grip really nicely and it's held up fine for me. Now I went and like rubbed it on a few things to see what would happen over time. I'm shaking the camera around there now. And it seemed okay, and and I was probably a little rougher on this than normally you would be. I mean, no one's going to go out and rub their knife handle against something wood or metal or concrete, and I did all that, and it did. Let's see if I can find it. Over time, the wear has kind of just gone away as I used it and carried it more. It's smoothed out, but maybe on the back here you can find it. Anyway, now I can't even find where I did it, but I did rub this on some stuff, and it rubbed and caused a little bit of damage, but nothing extreme. And certainly I didn't feel like, oh man, I'm going to break my knife or destroy it or anything like that. So at least at this point, with a month and a half to 2 months of use on this knife and pretty regular carry, and even purposely doing some things to see how that rubber would hold up, it seems fine. Now, is it still going to be fine in 5 years? I don't know. I will say this, if there were ever a problem, I do know Benchmade does a good job with their warranty, even though, I hate, like you, I hate having to send a knife in for warranty. So there we go. That's my main discussion of the handle. Now let me tell you what would make this into one of the best knives ever made, ever introduced to the market. And that is if you took this handle, leave the shape the same. If you want to put even a rubberized coating or a rubberized insert somewhere, that's great. But if you took this handle and constructed it the way the 20CV Griptilians are put together with the G10 and the standoffs, this knife would be a absolute winner. Now the problem I have with that is if Benchmade did it, they'd probably charge, I don't know, $250 for it, which is insane because I've got Chinese knives that were 19 bucks that have G10. So I don't know why all of a sudden G10 makes it cost $100 more, and that's a little bit of a frustration that I have with Benchmade. Torx construction, and the one thing they did do well here, they made sure all of the screws were going to be screwed into little metal inserts, so you don't have any problems with plastic or anything like that, and that's definitely something that you look for. Very comfortable in hand. Oh, I guess I should have said that right away. I talked a lot about the rubber and some of the problems with it. On the bright side, it is really, really comfortable. There's no question that and maybe you'd go, hey, I actually like that comfort so much that I would rather take the risk that it could get damaged as a trade-off for the amount of comfort and the amount of grippiness that it gives, because it does add a lot of grip and a lot of comfort to the knife. No question about that. That is definitely something that's really nice. Lastly, talking about comfort, the jimping here is typical Benchmade jimping. It is under the liner, so you really hardly get a hold of it. And I feel like as I put my thumb here and move it around, it's sticking more to the rubberized coating than it is to the metal jimping. So, and that's something that we often say about Benchmades. If I take the Benchmade jimping here, again, it does basically nothing. And we've had a few other Benchmades that have that same kind of problem. Now, let's get into some comparisons. First, I'm going to do the other comparisons, the non-Benchmade comparisons. Okay, first off, more for reference than anything else, is a Rat Model 1. You can see these are, hold on, let's see, there we go. These are fairly close in size to one another. The Freek does give you a little more cutting edge, which I do really, really like. And the blade to handle ratio on the Freek is definitely a little bit better. Plus, it's much lighter. Now I know we're not talking about knives in the same price category here, although this one being the carbon fiber and D2 is a little more expensive than your average Rat 1. Really, this is not there for comparison because they're not really in the same category. It's more there as a size reference for you. Now, the next knife that I want to bring in is not a size reference, but it is to be a placeholder for something else, okay? Obviously, and I think you guys know, this is the Manix 2 XL, and I love this knife. It's a wonderful knife. Really though, a Spyderco that has a compression lock, or has the ball lock, but it's a similar functioning lock. The Manix 2 would be a good comparison to this, although with the Manix 2 you're getting quite a bit less cutting edge. You can, though, get very lightweight offerings in the Manix series. And so I think that's, you know, if you're looking for a lightweight, easy to carry, good material blade, but you're not that big on this one, the Manix is definitely a good option. Next up, of course, the Paramilitary 2, and I think this knife is aimed directly at the Paramilitary 2. The price point is very close. The blade steel is the same. Again, I wish the construction were the same. I wish it was G10 with stainless steel liners and G10 with stainless steel liners over here. But, you know, as I say, that didn't happen. I would love to see it happen, though. So as competitors, I think it'll be interesting to see how this plays out. And at this point, I think what I'll do is hold off now and do a full comparison between these two in the future. Would love to hear in the comments below which one you prefer. Obviously, the Para 2 is very well loved, but there are some pretty compelling features about the Benchmade. Now, let's go ahead and bring in a couple of other Benchmades and make a few points about that. So here is one of my favorite Benchmades ever, the Crooked River. Here is another one of my favorite Benchmades ever, the Benchmade Contigo, this one in M390. And the reason I bring these in, I don't really think these are appealing to the same buyer as this, but I will say that the action on this is better than either of these, okay? That's how good they have done with the action on this knife. Both of these are good and they're fine and they've broken in nicely, but neither one is quite to the same extent as this guy. Now, finally, let's bring in the final and most important comparison. This is a similar and another new Benchmade for this year. This is the Benchmade Boost. Now, these are similar in size. The Boost is quite a bit heavier, getting up close to 5 ounces. Now, it's definitely not too heavy to be carried comfortably or anything like that. And I'll discuss that in my full review of this knife. I may do another video with a fuller comparison between these, but both of these have S30V. They're very, very similar in size. This one ships with a deep carry clip. However, if you want the deep carry clip to this, it's as simple as an email to Benchmade and they'll send one out to you. I like the blade on this one an awful lot. I really, really like, you know, this is just a cool looking blade, perhaps a little cooler looking than this one. Functionally, they're fairly similar, okay? There might be a little more cutting edge on the Boost. Here's the bigger difference though. The Boost is full stainless steel liners. And now, of course, the obvious difference is the Boost is assisted, but I have unassisted this. I carried it for a few days unassisted, and the action is phenomenal. This is a really, really nice knife unassisted. A couple people did ask me about that on Instagram, and it does work really, really well. In fact, it's just as smooth. You know, this knife, the way it'll drop shut like that, the Boost does it as well. Okay, so is this a new leaf for Benchmade? Are we going to see more consistent, you know, action and better blade grinds? The grind on this is pretty good as well. I hope that's what it means. I guess that remains to be seen. Now, I will say the centering on this guy is not phenomenal. Let's see if I can, I don't know, it looks good on camera, but trust me, in person, the centering is not great on this. It is pretty good on this, but it's not perfect. It's definitely very good for, you know, sort of what we've come to expect from Benchmade. This knife, by the way, is a little bit more. I think this is 140 and this is 110. So just to give you that extra bit of background information. So overall, what do I think of this knife? Honestly, guys, I think it's a really good knife. I do. Are there things I would change? Absolutely. If I had my way, this would be done in a full stainless steel with G10 handle, and that would make this knife absolutely amazing. You know, if you use the same construction as this, of course with standoffs instead of a backspacer. But even with a backspacer, I would be happy. This would be an absolutely, you know, home run out of the park, most amazing knife ever. As it stands, it's still a very good knife, and they were, by building it this way, able to get it extremely lightweight, which or I guess not extremely lightweight, but very lightweight. 3.7 ounces is super, super comfortable and not an issue at all. So yeah, I like this blade. I like the blade shape. I like the action. I like the ergonomics, right? There's not a lot of bad to say here. Yeah, are there some potential problems that I have? Yes. Who knows how well in 5 years this rubber is going to hold up. But at this point, even after some fairly intensive testing, it's still doing really, really well. There you go, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. Don't forget to like and subscribe, especially so you can see some further commentary on this knife when we compare it to the Boost and to, I don't know where I put my Para 2 down. I just had it. There we go, and to the Para 2. Look for those things coming up in the future. Hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching, and we will talk to you soon.